Okay, so I recently watched the Ghibli movie, Grave of the Fireflies, which I've been meaning to watch for a long time now. And it did not disappoint, like what people told me about it and how it made them cry. It's a tearjerker for sure. But it also had very important aspects and points that I noted down and wanted to summarize. And bear with me, I don't think I can read my handwriting from that day. I don't know why it's a bit scribbly. But the first thing that I noticed was that Seita, the main character, you see him and they called him, I think, a defect or something. And they wanted, so he was dying, practically a corpse. But instead of thinking to help or save him, they just said, here's another one, and we can't have the Americans see him and stuff like that. Was just as something to be disposed of, which was very disturbing. What war does to you, how it shifts your view and perspective on lives and humans, and how everyone just doesn't seem like something worth fighting for or saving. That was crazy, first of all. But then he, as he died, he went into this other plane and he met up with this kid. And I didn't know who this kid was. I know he said the name Setsuko, but I didn't know who that was. So I actually thought that was his child self. And I thought Seita was a soldier, practically used for war and disposed of at the end. And just left there to die. So just seeing him meeting up in this new plane, this new dimension, in his astral projected self, I thought he was meeting up with his child self. And then I thought that no human is born and raised as a child and thinks in that innocent stage of their life that they are going to be a soldier or in the business of killing and being killed, and nobody grows up imagining themselves to be in that situation. It's nobody's dream. You know how you ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nobody dreams of killing or being killed or being in a situation like that. And it's crazy. Also, this happened later on, but in the movie, okay, yeah. So the second point is you see constantly that people are being attacked. The innocent, the civilians, the everyday people that did not ask to be in this war, that did not have a say, but then they're left to their own devices, to their demise, by the decisions of people on top, basically. And I remember there was after this one raid, I think I remember seeing one person praising the Empire of Japan and then performing, I think you call it harakiri, stabbing, basically suicide for the nation, for the empire. And it's crazy. Then it occurred to me how crazy it is that what ideas could be sold to people about what is good and what is bad. And somehow governments were able to sell the idea of war being something good for the nation or the people, when in fact it's only bad, only ever bad, and there are only losing ends, only losing sides. So I do not get, it's scary what you can make a person believe, or a whole group of people, just so that they can make sense of the world that they live in and justify certain actions. So yeah, so the main aspect that I forgot in the first part is that everyday normal people, they just want to live their lives. They just want to live with their loved ones and have good times and have fun and not be subjected to such horror and such terror and such so many atrocities and the war crimes and being devalued as a human, and their lives being diminished to scraps and like nothing worthy of keeping or saving. And basically, these everyday people, they don't deserve to live in a life like that they were put in through these wars. So carrying on with the notes I have on Grave of the Fireflies, one thing I wrote down which was apparent to me is that it shows as well very vividly that the most important things in life are the simplest things, the things that you won't remember to write down or take a photo of, like just the sheer moments of happiness that you spend with your loved ones. And for example, I think the fruit drops that he carried and that he gave to his sister every time to make her feel special or to console her or to stop her from crying or feeling sad, like that was a symbol for something. It was so simple, and it was all she needed, as well as just it showed very beautifully that all they actually needed was each other. Of course, they had so many troubles just being on their own, but we'll get to that. But this, like, also simple times where, for example, they imagined their mom calling them for food after a beach day. That part made me cry, because I could really feel that all they wanted was to have their mom call them again. And those moments you just take for granted, you don't really think about them, but yeah, that was very touching. And another aspect was that Seita, he barely cried. One particular moment is when he cried when Setsuko talked about how their mom was in a grave and she knew it, and he had been trying to hide that truth from her, and he had been keeping it together and staying strong for his little toddler sister. And then he had no more armor to like keep it together, and he just burst into tears, because that was like his way to just. And then he realized he couldn't be strong for her, or he needn't be at that moment, because she already knew. Another time he cried was when he got like beaten up by that farmer, and he was at the police, and she followed him, and she didn't care. Like he was ashamed, I think, to not having been able to provide for her in a legitimate, in a honorable way, and he resorted to stealing. And all she cared for, though, was that he heals up and gets better. She did not care for what he thought was not honorable, or his misdeeds, or whatever. So, yeah. And so, more from Grave of the Fireflies. Basically, we saw how they were in their aunt's house and how they were treated. They weren't treated terribly, but quite restricted. And the boy, I don't know how old he was. He couldn't have been older than like 12 to 15 or something. I'm not really sure, but the aunt kept pushing him, wanting him to serve the country somehow, or which she wasn't wrong about. To go to school isn't a wrong thing. However, he decided for the both of them to become more independent from like the aunt and the aunt's family, and eventually also moved out. This gave them more freedom to decide how and what to eat, but it came with a lot of troubles, and it was very striking that the aunt didn't even try to stop them from moving out, and she didn't know where they were going to go, but it didn't really matter to her. She just said, take care, okay, see you off. Like, she just saw them off. Yeah. And it's just crazy how this little boy, who was basically a child, all of a sudden found himself orphaned and having to take care of his toddler sister, which is a really hard task for anyone, but especially a child. And all of a sudden as well, Setsuko, the sister, was eventually malnourished, which ended her life prematurely, and there was nothing the brother could do about it. It was a very horrible sight to see how she was on her deathbed, dying and half dead and hallucinating, and he tried his best, but at the end of the day, he's a child and he couldn't save her. This also shows you need parents, you need guardians. Children can't just make it on their own. But in times of war and being stripped from normal life, sadly, children are the most vulnerable demographic, and to no fault of their own are they put into this situation. And then when she died, my first thought was for him, what was the point? What's the point of living at all anymore? You have nothing to live for, nothing to hold on to, nothing. This is like, it was just awful to see that. And all these circumstances just forced him and them to grow up fast, and too fast, and they couldn't keep up, and it's just awful. And for the last few notes of what I wrote down for the movie Grave of the Fireflies, one sort of positive aspect was when they sold, or they were forced to sell, their mom's clothes, which was really hard on Setsuko, the little toddler daughter, or child. They were able to buy a lot of rice with it, which fed them. And it kind of felt like the mom was still looking out for them, even beyond the grave. So that was kind of touching. However, after Setsuko died, they showed a bunch of scenes of her innocently playing and fishing and eating, and even pricking her finger while sewing and bleeding a little on her finger. And my thoughts were, she'll never bleed like that again. She's just gone. And her whole future was stolen from her. And so her brother has to perform the cremation on his own. The guy who sold him the stuff was very insensitive and just talking about how wonderful the weather was. That was so bizarre. Like, I think people really lost it. They forgot how to human. And so eventually her ashes were put in that fruit drops can, which he took with him, and then it said in the end he left for the mountains, and never returned to the cave. And then eventually he died. It's just extremely sad. And I cried a bunch of times in this movie. And this next part, this next note that I wrote, the last one, she asked why fireflies live such short lives or die so quickly. And I immediately thought the same for her mom, who ended up dying too quickly for them, when they actually needed her. And of course, the same applies to the kids, to her, to Setsuko and Seita. Why did they have to die so quickly and have such short lives? And I think there is no answer, obviously, and it shouldn't have been like that. And I don't know what to say. I hope that everybody watches this movie and realizes how pointless any sort of fight and war is. I don't know what to say. That's the worst part. You feel like this was avoidable. This did not have to be inevitable. This did not have to be inevitable. This could have been stopped. This could have been prevented. And that's the most fucked up part. And you also see that people don't just die from bombs or guns or shots, or people, and especially children, suffer in these circumstances due to what the war brings, the malnourishment, the lack of food, the lack of a guardian, the lack of shelter, and sometimes these bio weapons are used against the people to decimate them and to dwindle their numbers and eradicate them, and just leaving nothing there for them to return to. Yeah, I just wish this movie would be shown everywhere and everyone would really take it to heart and make a change. Yeah, I know this was a really sad topic, but I just had to make it. I had to. And I had to watch this movie, and yeah, it's a definite recommendation.